Your alarm goes off at 6:15 a.m., not because you want to wake up, but because that is exactly how long it takes to get ready, grab coffee, and fight traffic to reach the office by 8. You repeat this routine 5 days a week, most of the year. You spend the day under fluorescent lights, answering emails that could have been texts, sitting through meetings that add little value. Lunch becomes a $13 salad because meal prep did not happen again. Around 3 p.m., you buy a $3 energy drink just to stay functional. At 5:30, you finally leave, but you sit in the parking lot scrolling your phone because your brain is too exhausted to drive yet. You get home around 6:45. Dinner turns into Uber Eats, 52 after fees and tip. You tell yourself you earned it. On paper, this looks fine. Your offer letter says you make $40 an hour. That sounds solid. But that number only exists in theory. Once you account for commuting, work clothes, convenience food, and the spending required just to recover from the day, and once you count the unpaid time getting ready, traveling, and decompressing, that $40 an hour collapses. When you do the real accounting on your life, the forensic version, you might not be making $40 an hour at all. You might be making $7 an hour, maybe less. My name is Alex, and today we are going to break this down using simple math and real life, not motivation or hustle advice. By the end of this video, you will understand what your job is actually paying you and why that number is very different from what your offer letter promised. If this already feels uncomfortably accurate, tap the like button so more people see work explained the way it actually works. Why ignoring costs breaks the math. Imagine a small business owner checking sales at the end of the month. The numbers look good. Money came in. But when the bank balance is lower than expected, confusion sets in. Nothing feels obviously wrong, yet something is off. This is how most people experience their job. You see the income, but you rarely see the full list of costs tied to producing it. For example, think about a normal weekday. You wake up earlier than you would naturally. You spend time getting ready in a way you wouldn't on a day off. You drive a route you would never drive otherwise. None of that time or money exists without the job. Even small things add up. A $15 lunch near the office instead of leftovers. Paying for parking because street spots are gone by 8 a.m. A quick online order because you get home too late to run errands. These are not lifestyle upgrades. They are operating expenses. But because no one labels them that way, they feel invisible. When businesses ignore operating costs, they slowly go broke. When workers ignore them, they slowly feel stuck. The problem is not effort or discipline. It is that the math is being done incorrectly. Once you start treating your job like a business transaction instead of a personal identity, the confusion clears. You stop asking, "Why am I not ahead?" and start asking a better question. What is this actually costing me to run? The first invisible cut. Before your lifestyle even enters the picture, your hourly rate has already been reduced. Your offer letter might say $40 an hour, but your bank account never sees $40 an hour. By the time federal tax, state tax, and payroll deductions take their share, that number quietly drops. On a normal paycheck, this happens automatically, so it barely registers as a loss. You glance at the deposit, shrug, and move on. But think about how this plays out in real terms. If your paycheck shows $28 or $30 an hour after deductions, that is your real starting point, not 40. The rest was never usable income. Most people mentally skip this step because it feels unavoidable. Taxes are treated like background noise, not a cost worth examining. But when you're trying to understand what your job actually pays, ignoring this first cut distorts everything that comes after. This is why raises often feel smaller than expected. You hear a number, celebrate for a moment, and then wonder why your life barely changes. The increase exists, but only in theory. In practice, it is filtered before it reaches you. This is not about avoiding taxes or being upset about them. It is about honesty. If you start your math at the gross number instead of the usable number, every conclusion you reach afterward will be off. The cost of accessing the job. After taxes, the next layer of cost shows up in a quieter way. It is the money you spend just to be able to show up. Think about a normal workday. You live where you live largely because of the job. The rent is higher or the commute is longer, so you can be within reasonable distance of the office. You own a car you would not need otherwise, or you pay for a monthly transit pass. Gas, insurance, maintenance, parking. None of these expenses exist without the job, yet they are treated as personal choices. Then there is appearance. You cannot roll out of bed and go to work the way you would on a weekend. You buy clothes that meet expectations, not comfort. You replace shoes more often. You pay for dry cleaning or spend time ironing at night. Even grooming costs more when it is done to look presentable 5 days a week. These are not lifestyle upgrades, they are access fees. If the job disappeared tomorrow, many of these costs would disappear with it. That is the key detail most people overlook. When you calculate what you earn, these expenses should be counted as part of the job's price, not your personal spending. Until you see them that way, your income will always look bigger than it actually is. The convenience trap. Once your time is structured around work, spending starts to fill the gaps. On paper, nothing dramatic is happening. You are not buying luxury items. You are just making the day easier. Lunch near the office because you did not have time to pack food. Coffee on the way in because mornings are rushed. A grocery delivery fee because you get home late and the store is already closing. Each purchase feels small and reasonable. You tell yourself it is about efficiency, not indulgence. And in isolation, that is true. The problem is frequency. When your schedule leaves a little margin, convenience stops being an occasional choice and becomes a daily requirement. You're no longer paying for the product. You're paying for time you do not have. That $12 lunch is not about food. It is about buying back 20 minutes. The delivery fee is not laziness, it is exhaustion. Over a week, it feels manageable. Over a year, it quietly becomes thousands of dollars spent just to keep up with the pace of work. And unlike rent or taxes, these costs are invisible because they arrive in small, forgettable amounts. This is how people with decent incomes feel constantly behind. Their money is not being wasted. It is being converted into convenience at the exact rate their time is being consumed. Paying to recover from work. There is another category of spending that rarely shows up in budgets because it does not look like a work expense. It looks personal. Think about how your spending changes after a hard week. Friday night turns into takeout instead of cooking. Drinks feel earned. Online shopping happens late at night, not because you need something, but because it feels like relief. A short trip gets booked because you just need a break. None of this is about pleasure in the usual sense. It is about recovery. Work drains energy, patience, and attention. When that drain is constant, money steps in to fill the gap. You pay for entertainment because you are too tired to be creative. You pay for convenience because you have no margin left. You pay for distraction because thinking feels like work. These purchases are not signs of weak discipline. They are predictable responses to overload. The job creates the stress, and spending becomes the pressure valve. Over time, this kind of spending becomes normalized. It stops feeling like a reaction and starts feeling like part of life. But if the job were lighter, more flexible, or less draining, much of it would shrink or disappear. This is why the real cost of work is higher than it looks. You are not just paid to do the job. You're also paying to repair the damage it leaves behind. The myth of the 40-hour week. Most jobs are described as 40 hours a week. That number sounds precise, but it ignores how work actually fits into a day. Think about a typical weekday. You wake up earlier than you would naturally. You spend time getting ready in a way you would not on a day off. You commute, which may not be on the clock, but it is not free time either. You cannot use it the way you want. It belongs to the job. At work, there is an unpaid lunch hour where you are technically off, but still stuck near the office. You cannot go home, rest, or reset. After work, you commute again. When you finally get home, there is a period where you are physically present but mentally unavailable. You stare at your phone, vent, or scroll, not for fun, but because your brain needs to shut down. None of this is counted as work, yet none of it exists without the job. Even weekends are affected. You think about Monday. You recover from the week. You plan around work instead of around life. When you add this up, most people are not working 40 hours. They are dedicating 50 or 60 hours of their week to employment. The job does not just take time. It reshapes how all remaining time feels. What you are really earning per hour. Once you see all the pieces, the math becomes hard to ignore. Start with what actually reaches your bank account after taxes. Then subtract the costs that only exist because of the job. Commuting, work clothes, convenience food, services you pay for because you're not home. and the spending you use to recover from stress. What is left is your usable income. Now look at time, not just the hours listed on your contract, but the time spent getting ready, traveling, decompressing, and mentally carrying work into the evening. Add it up over a year. When you divide the money that remains by the total time the job consumes, the hourly rate changes dramatically. This is where people get uncomfortable. Someone who believes they earn $40 an hour may discover the number is closer to 10, sometimes lower. Not because the employer is cheating them, but because the math they were using was incomplete. This explains a lot of confusion. It explains why saving feels harder than it should, why raises feel underwhelming, why time always feels scarce. The job is not just paying less than you thought, it is charging more than you realized. And once you see that clearly, you stop asking why money feels tight and start seeing where it is actually going. Shifting the metric that actually matters. Once you see the real math, the goal changes. It is no longer about making the biggest number on your offer letter. It is about improving what is left after the job takes its share. This starts with small, practical decisions. Working from home 1 or 2 days a week saves hours of commuting and hundreds of dollars a month. That is a raise without a new title. Cooking on Sunday reduces weekday stress and cuts convenience spending. Living slightly closer to work can be worth more than a pay increase when you account for time and energy. These changes do not look impressive on a resume. They do not signal status, but they quietly increase margin. The biggest shift is mental. You stop treating income as proof of success and start treating it like business revenue. Every job has costs. The question is whether the return is worth them. Someone earning $50,000 a year, working reasonable hours, and saving consistently is in a stronger position than someone earning twice that with no time, no energy, and no margin. One is sustainable. The other is fragile. When you optimize for margin instead of income, spending decisions slow down. Time feels less scarce, and money finally starts to behave the way you expected it to all along. That is what real progress looks like. When more money makes things worse. This is where the math surprises most people. When money feels tight, the natural response is to aim higher. A raise, a promotion, more responsibility. On paper, it looks like progress. The salary number goes up. But look at what changes in daily life. You stay later more often. Messages follow you into the evening. Cooking becomes rare because you get home late. Takeout becomes normal. You buy better clothes because expectations rise. Stress increases, so weekends turn into recovery instead of rest. None of this feels reckless. Each step feels reasonable given the role. But when you run the real numbers again, something strange happens. The extra income increases the money flowing through your account, not the amount you actually keep. Costs rise alongside responsibility, and time becomes even more compressed. This is how people end up with good salaries and no margin. They are earning more, but their real hourly wage is flat, or even lower than before. The job becomes harder to leave because the lifestyle now depends on it. What looked like freedom starts to feel like pressure. The issue is not ambition or effort. It is evaluating progress using the wrong metric. Without accounting for time and cost, higher pay can quietly make life more expensive instead of better. Key takeaway: your salary is not what you earn. It is what your employer pays before your life absorbs the cost. When you factor in taxes, time, convenience spending, and recovery, many good jobs pay far less than they appear. The solution is not working harder or chasing bigger numbers. It is understanding your real hourly wage and protecting your margin, your time, energy, and usable income. You measure work this way, spending becomes more intentional, decisions slow down, and progress finally feels real. If this changed how you think about your paycheck, like the video, and share it with someone who feels exhausted but cannot explain why.